Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar video. This one's I suppose going to be a bit of a weird one. It's going to be a kind of combination video of one kind of my hopes and expectations for the Zen Monkey Studios kind of pins going forward. And I suppose linking a sort of like character kind of discussion type thing into it, in that because these are like this kind of like collection of like collectible pins, it feels like there's to some degree like the potential that they really expand this and do a lot of characters and they really become this almost a checklist of characters. So I think it's one of those interesting ones to be like, okay, in the fandom, which are the most popular characters, and kind of using the kind of judgment of like which character is like worthy enough, popular enough to justify getting a pin. And I think I just found it to be a little bit of an interesting one of being like, okay, you know, that character, a lot of people like them, but perhaps not enough to justify, you know, a pin being made about them because you don't know if it would sell to enough people. And just that distinction kind of being made as this kind of like, who are the super mainstream characters versus who aren't, and, you know, who are the absolute main characters in the show versus the ones that aren't quite there. So let's kind of just jump into this and kind of go through the characters and really kind of talk about who are the main characters in the show, who kind of has to get a pin at some point, and perhaps the characters that are just there on the threshold of like, yeah, I think there's enough there for that character to get a pin. So let's start with Korra characters. I'll split it up into Korra and Avatar. So with Korra, obviously we have the main team Avatar, Korra, Mako, Bole, and Asami. They already have pins, and of course, there's so many opportunities to do other different designs of pins with them. Korra has, you know, 2 more really obvious designs to do, potentially 3. You know, you could do an Avatar State Korra, a Book 2 Korra, a Book 4 Korra. Mako, you can obviously have a more action-focused one of him doing firebending or lightning generation. Bolin, you could do, you know, he has a bunch of different outfits. You can do him lava bending, you could do him earth bending. And then Asami, similarly, you could do different poses. So they're already confirmed. They're already out. So they're the really clear ones. Next, I suppose we move on to the group of like basically the Airbender family. So Tenzin already has a pin, of course. Then there's his children: Jinora, Milo, Ikki, Rohan. We don't know enough to really, I think, really bring into this in terms of getting a pin. And I think while a lot of people like Pema, perhaps not the type of character in terms of like the development that she got to maybe justify a pin. So realistically here it's Tenzin, Jinora, Milo, Ikki. I believe on Twitter Zen Monkey Studios have at least confirmed that they're in the design process on some Milo pins. They seem to have 2 designs, and they were asking fans which one of the designs they should kind of send in for approval first. There's like a Be the Leaf one, and then there was one of Milo chewing on Tenzin's head. So I thought both of the designs looked really cool. I personally would lean towards the Be the Leaf because I felt like that scene and that statement became such a kind of meme, and it sort of represents airbending as well. As opposed to like, okay, Milo chewing on Tenzin's head, it looks cool, but perhaps not the most memorable scene from the show. Jinora, I think, has to get a pin at some point. She obviously was like the breakout star in Book 2, and then how they used her in Book 3. Like, she's just a character who transitioned from in the first season just kind of being one of the Air Kids to actually being this character we really care about, and that deep spiritual connection. Just, I think there's lots of Jinora fans who would love a pin of her. Ikki is one of those characters who, like, if you do the other 2 Air Kids, you kind of have to do Ikki, but she kind of feels like the least developed in the show. But she has her moments, and if you are going to do the other 2, I feel absolutely you need to do an Ikki pin. Next, I suppose we get into the villains, and I think the villains are an important thing for Korra because they very much represent each of the books. That even if you can't remember the name of every book, you sort of remember the villain and their kind of ideology. So you have, you know, Amon, but also Tarlok. Let's not forget Tarlok was one of the villains in Korra Book 1 as well, and they're brothers. So it makes sense that you kind of do both of them as like the bloodbending brothers. So I think Amon is just a very obvious one, just the mask. It's a design that really, really fits. And then if you manage to do Tarlok in some sort of a bloodbending pose, that would be a really cool pin as well. Even if perhaps he doesn't look maybe as unique as some of the other characters. Unalaq, he's the book 2 villain. You have to do him at some point. And again, you have a few options. You can do standard Unalaq waterbending. You can kind of do Dark Avatar Unalaq. You could do Unavatu. There's a lot of options because he does undergo kind of various kind of spiritual, in a way, transformations. Then there's the book 3 villains, who are obviously like beloved by the fans because of their kind of power and stuff like that. So if you found a way to really emphasize their skills in their design in a pin, I think those would sell very well. Here, of course, airbending, there's lots of options there. Pali, combustion bending, could be a little bit difficult to portray combustion bending in a pose, but I think her design in of itself is fine. Gazan, Minghua, maybe not the best characters, still cool abilities. Minghua feels like the kind of perhaps easier one to do with the water arms. Maybe it'll be difficult to kind of portray lava bending in a pin, but still, makes sense. And then Kuvira from book 4, obviously, you kind of have to do that. She was another fan favorite villain. So all those sort of make sense. I could understand if they maybe, like, if Zen Monkey Studios were planning on, like, really covering a lot of ground with the pins, if they made the decision to be like, okay, well, this is here, but we not really sure about, like, Minghua, Gazan, Pali. Next, I suppose, is the group of just characters who maybe aren't part of those groups, but probably justify, like, should get a pin at some point. Korra's father, Tonrock. I think he was utilized enough throughout the books to be like, people like him as a character. He's a good fighter. He really represents, I suppose, that kind of physical aspect of, like, where Korra, gets a lot of her kind of skills from, in a way. Lin Beifong, of course, makes complete sense. I believe they have confirmed a Lin pin. In that, I think they said they have plans to do a Lin and also a Su Yin kind of pin set. But just in terms of my tier ranking, I think Lin is above Su Yin. Just because she was in the show a bit longer. But yeah, for sure, Lin. Avatar 1, absolutely. He's one of those characters where he's only really in those 2 episodes and then makes kind of like occasional, like, you sort of see him in the, like, lineup of avatars and kind of other episodes. But in terms of just fandom based around one character, he is definitely, I think, the one where, like, it probably surprises a lot of people to see just how popular he is. That the 2 beginnings episodes are just fan favorites for so many people. Like myself, they're my 2 favorite episodes. So he is a character who I really, really like and absolutely would love to see a pin of. There's also Varric, and I think the thing with Varric is, like, he's just a humorous character who they later did some important stuff with, but I feel there's so much option to just put a really good expression on his face and have that be a really just fun pin. So I think he probably just about deserves to be done. Then there's kind of, like, I suppose, the non-human characters, but, like, spirits and animals that deserve to be done. In my opinion, Rava, Vatu and Vatu, like, absolutely should be done. The designs of them, given how, like, they're basically kind of shaped like kites, there's not too many colours to them. They feel like they'd work, like, perfectly as pins. I've seen some people suggest that they maybe do kind of like 2 in 1, which could work, I think, but for sure, like, separately together, Rava, Vatu, I think, would work. I've seen that suggestion a lot. And then, of course, Naga and Pabu as the main animals. I believe Pabu is on the Bolin pin that's already out, but I think people would appreciate perhaps one on its own. And then Naga is beloved in a very similar way to the way Appa is for Avatar, and I think a pin of Naga on her own would sell quite well as well. Now for the, I suppose, group of core characters who, are probably the remaining main characters, but maybe they're not popular enough where, like, you could understand why perhaps we're not really getting merchandise for these characters. But obviously Aang's son Bumi, Aang's daughter Kaya, Su Yin, we know she is getting a pin now, but I suppose initially I'd be kind of like, I'd understand if they maybe didn't want to make a Su Yin. Eska, Desna, I think if they were ever to do a pin, they'd probably just have it be of the 2 of them, which would make sense rather than doing separate ones. Opal, I think just because of obviously the relationship with Bolin, and then the focus that she got in book 3, I think she became a little bit of a fan favorite for a while. Kai, I think, was a very good minor character introduced in book 3. Again, I think with those two, it's kind of a case of like very much it's completely based on their appearances in book 3, because book 4 we haven't really seen a lot of them. Julie, I suppose, to go with Varric, they kind of made her much more important in book 4, but I could definitely understand why they wouldn't see the appeal in terms of like how much a Julie's pin would sell. And I think similarly with Hiroshi, he's in with the villains, but I think visually maybe he doesn't have the appeal as that sort of a character, so I could understand why they wouldn't want to make a Hiroshi pin. With Avatar: The Last Airbender, I think it's a very interesting one, because your core group of characters who are kind of like, yeah, they have to be made into a pin at some point, is actually quite small. And then you're kind of really extending into the like maybe category for anything else. So first of all, obviously, is the Team Avatar. So Aang, Katara, Sokka, Toph, Zuko, and Suki. So 5 of these 6 we know are getting pins. Aang already has one. We know there's I think another Aang pin coming. We know there's a Katara, Sokka, Toph, and Zuko. But Suki, I think, is a character you have to. There's a reason why every so often, whenever there's some sort of an announcement, and like Team Avatar is mentioned, with the absence of Suki, there's a reason so many people jump in to be like, where's Suki? Hashtag where's Suki? Have they just forgotten about Suki? Let's not remember that she came back into the show after her appearance in book 1 because the writers, the crew, saw how popular the character was based off her appearance in episode 4 and decided to bring her back, and then decided to like make her part of the team at the end. And it sort of feels like she's a little bit forgotten by all the creative teams, comics, the show, and so on, but she has a big fan base. Like it always surprises me, even though I'm a member of that kind of group, who's like, no, Suki's part of the team. She's a very, very, very popular character. So she absolutely, I think, needs to get a pin at some point. And again, you have options. You can do her in her Kyoshi Warrior outfit, or you can do her in her like finale outfit without the makeup. The 2 obvious animals to do would be Appa and Momo, of course. I think an Appa pin would be great, and a Momo pin I think would do just as well. Then we get into, I suppose, the Fire Nation kind of support characters in a way. We have Iroh, of course. He already has a pin, but I could see the benefit to maybe doing a more maybe action-orientated Iroh pose. Azula is probably, I think, at this point in time, like one of the most popular characters in the entire franchise. Just because, I suppose, of the timing that we're in right now, where she already was a fan favorite just from the show, but where the comics are right now, and the fact that it's kind of like this arc is set up for her to happen at some point. They've been teasing the whole Ursa kind of connection and what she's doing to Zuko and her new kind of path, while still being kind of the same old Azula. There's so much hype around, like, please let the next Avatar comic focus on Azula's story. You set it up so well, now do more. It's really highlighted how many people just adore this character. So I think she has to be an absolute lock to be done at some point. Just because she kind of is on that level of like a Toph, an Iroh, where there's a huge fan base around just that kind of individual character. I noticed that like on my YouTube channel, like characters, when I do like videos about specifically discussing characters, it's, like I said, it's Iroh, it's probably Iroh, Zuko, Toph, and Azula who are like the main ones, where like it's noticeably like those videos get more attention because those individual characters have a fan base to themselves. And of those 2, I would say Iroh and Azula are probably the 2 who stand out above the others, because there's so much mystery around Iroh and his backstory, so he gets discussed a lot. And then Azula, it's kind of right there that we're just about to get into more of her story, so that has to be done. Ozai, I think, main villain. If you're committing to doing villains at any point, I think Ozai is someone you should do a pin of. And then to round off Ozai's Angels, if you're going to do Azula, I think you have to do Mei and Ty Lee. Mei has, I think in the last few years, really kind of stepped up as like, yeah, she is a very, very popular character. Her appearance in Smoke and Shadow, I think, really turned a few people who maybe didn't like the character around on her. As well as, just great moments in like The Boiling Rock and so on. Similarly with Ty Lee, again, she's been very fun in the comics, and what they did towards the end of the show with her made her kind of a standout character as well. Then, obviously, this is more like not so connected to ATLA, but just the franchise in general. But I think, it's probably a good idea at some point, if you did a Roku pin, a Kyoshi pin, a Karuk pin, and a Yang Chen pin, just to kind of represent the 4 older avatars. I think Karuk is a level below the others in that Roku has the appeal because he's the advisor to Aang. He's the avatar before Aang, so we know him a lot. Kyoshi is again a kind of fan favorite character because she's so strong, and there's so many little bits about her. Like, she's the tallest avatar, she's the most physically imposing avatar. She did all this kind of crazy stuff with how blunt she was in the past. And then Yang Chen is just like the wisest avatar. Karuk, I think, has a cool design, and his story in its own right is fine, but I don't think he gets the attention the others do. And then Avatar, I think, has a pretty good list of characters who are like, yeah, a lot of people like this character, don't know if they deserve a pin. If they're going for more comedy pins, I think the Cabbage Merchant is a pin they should do, and probably, I can see them doing a Cabbage Merchant pin at some point. It's one of those things where, it's such a well-known kind of joke meme in the franchise now, and even then, they've kind of made him into a little bit of a serious character. His appearance in the comics, how they've kind of continued his legacy on in Korra with Cabbage Corp. It is more than just an in-joke in the fandom now. It's a notable thing, this Cabbage Merchant character, so I can see them doing him quite good. Obviously, old King Boomy, I think they absolutely probably should do at some point, just because he's such a unique design of a character. Hakoda, I think, he's a popular character. North and South came out last year. He was very, popular, how they portrayed him in that. Maybe visually, a pin of him wouldn't work so well, and I completely understand that. But there are some people I know who would love to see something like that. Commander Zhao, Admiral Zhao, whichever rank you want to call him by, Book 1 villain. I could understand why they maybe wouldn't want to do him, because it is just, the Book 1 villain. He's not the most interesting character, but still, I think it's definitely one of those potential characters. Then there's Order of the White Lotus members like Paku, Piandao, Zhong, in similar ways to the Red Lotus. They're just the good guy representatives on their faction. Strong benders and non-benders. I suppose one thing would be Lion Turtle. Getting into some animals type stuff, like Lion Turtle, Badger Mole, dragons. I think pins of those would be pretty cool. Obviously, we have one key Lion Turtle, the one from the Avatar finale, but you obviously have these other Lion Turtles from beginnings. Dragons, we have a few specific ones. Ran, Shaw, Fang, Druk, and then Sozin's dragon, who we don't know the name of. And then there's one from one of the comics as well. And then Badger Moles, obviously we don't know any ones really specifically, but I think a Badger Mole pin would be cool. And then in terms of other characters, Jet, I think, appeared in the show enough where I could get why they do a Jet pin. Ursa is one I kind of want to say, but again, maybe visually, sort of like Hiroshi, sort of like Hakoda, I can maybe understand why it visually wouldn't be the best pin. It's not the most main character, but maybe simply for the fact of just what happened to Zuko's mom, it's one of those pins that's just kind of yeah, that would be a kind of fun little thing to do. But yeah, I think that's the discussion here. Obviously, bit of a weird one here, having this discussion, but I really do think the announcement of Zen Monkey Studios doing all these Avatar pins, and especially with how they've kind of on social media, kind of really tried to interact with the fandom about what characters do you want to see, showing different designs and basically doing a little Twitter kind of poll type thing to see which one they'll send in first. It feels like they're really committing to this, and I think the fandom has responded quite well, and I believe they've all sold pretty well from what they've been saying, and it just is, for me especially, who focuses on all this Avatar merch and stuff like that comes out throughout the year, it's gotten me excited enough to like do all these videos covering it, and do a speculation video like this of like, these are the characters who I think should get pins and are popular enough within the fandom, from my experience, to get pins, and visually that would look good and so on. So yeah, I just thought it would make a fun discussion. I completely understand if this doesn't appeal to everyone, but I just thought it had that kind of dual appeal of like, one, it solves the problem of like what characters should be done as the pins, but also is like this, who are the really, really, really popular characters in the series, and I think that's what is kind of pointed out here. But yeah, that's the main thing I wanted to say here. As I said, I think of characters who are not yet announced as pins, I think the really, really key ones to do are probably Avatar 1, Azula, and then I'd arguably say like Suki. I'd say like, just to finish off Team Avatar and include her, I think you'd get people buying that just because the fandom based around Suki would kind of be like, what? There's a Suki piece of merchandise? Yes, please, type thing. But again, like I said here, there's, you know, about 24, I think, fairly notable core characters. There's what do I have here? 8, 13, like 17, I think, key ATLA characters. You know, if they're really planning on like making Avatar a big kind of thing in like the next year, the next couple of months, they've got a lot of good characters to kind of go off here. Like, this isn't a case of like, I think this fandom will only buy like 4 or 5 characters, or like maybe stretching out to like 10 from the entire series. No, I think you'd sell a lot pins for like a lot of these characters, just because there are so many good characters in both shows. So yeah, in the comments let me know what your thoughts are on this video, and what I suppose the main question, what pins would you like to see from Zen Monkey Studios? But yeah, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.